Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today I have the great pleasure to chat to someone who I thoroughly enjoyed watching his art on the AFL football field. Mathew Stokes, how are you, mate?
Not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Very, very well. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and to pick through this journey so far. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Like I said, no problems at all. I'm happy to be a part of it.
I'm regardless super excited and very, very humbled. So yeah, thank you so much for coming aboard and let's get into it. Where did the love of footy first begin for you? I guess if we really go back to kind of square one, I mean, were you one of those boys that was kind of almost born with a footy in the hand, or did it take a little while to kind of discover the game, fall in love with it? What were things like for you in those early days?
I think I always had a footy in my hand. I think, obviously, with like a lot of other boys, it was passed down from my dad.
Yep.
John Stokes, if you ask him, was a living legend of territory footy.
Yep.
And I was fortunate enough, I grew up with the Davey boys. So Aaron and Alan, and Alan's twin Russie at Palms and Magpies in the Northern Territory League. And pretty much since I can remember, they've always been a part of my life, or part of the footy journey really early on. And Trent Henschel, who was another player at the Crows, we pretty much played all our junior footy together. And the love of footy probably grew from there, and the friendships that we had with that group of guys. We all played junior footy together. We all missed out on drafts. We all went to Adelaide to get drafted. We all did get drafted, and it was a pretty good journey from then. So the footy journey for me started really early. My dad was a premiership captain of the Palmerston Magpies.
Yep.
So I was always going to inherit that responsibility of doing the Maggies proud. And that group of guys that we came through, we were fortunate enough that we all played all our junior footy together, like I said, and then played some senior footy, and then we all moved away and made careers away from there. So, I definitely had footy in my hands the whole time, but I think I probably was juggling the footy with the basketball pretty much my whole junior life. So, I didn't grow too tall, as you would be aware.
Played a point guard role.
So basketball probably took away, the height probably took away the option of being a basketball, but obviously it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've had an incredible career, and I assume, like on that basketball side, and I kind of threw it out there a moment ago, I assume you were playing kind of that point guard sort of role as a result of maybe that relative lack of height compared to maybe some other players? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, obviously the height was always a bit of a factor when it came to my basketball career, but loved playing as a junior, and pretty much, with the territory, we were quite lucky in Darwin because basketball and football sort of mirrored each other when it comes to the opposite seasons of each other. So it was pretty much, basketball into rugby league and then into football. So I was always competitive when I played sports, and was lucky enough that with the territory, with the weather that we have up there in Darwin, was fortunate enough that we could have sports all year round.
Yeah, that's a pretty handy. I mean, lots of parts of Australia really have that really clearly defined, wet and hot season, and the kind of really, I guess, limits the nature of some of the sports you can play. But to have that sort of luxury to just 12 months a year really just lean into whatever sport you loved is kind of handy. And I guess, as you mentioned, to have the likes of Trent Henschel and the Davey boys around you, like I guess retrospect is one of those incredible things, and being able to kind of reflect even on the fan side, I guess, even looking at hearing those names, you go, How did you guys get drafted first up? Like, how did it take a little while? And I guess, like, how did you digest that at the time when you've put up your hand, you've expressed the interest and tried your hand and it's not worked out initially? How did you digest that at first?
It was pretty difficult from my end. I mean, I moved away from Darwin when I was about 15 to pursue footy. Wasn't great academically at school. So footy was sort of number one and number two and number three on the list of priorities. So I think I was a pretty talented junior coming through, and went away with the Australian team like a lot of guys, with Luke Hodge, Luke Ball. And I thought the skill level probably I was, quite capable of being able to stand with those guys. It was maybe the territory ability of being able to pick up the professionalism of
Yep.
footy was probably maybe my issue. And I think everything happens for a reason. I'm always a firm believer in that. And maybe I wasn't mature enough to be playing or being on an AFL list when I was 18. So to be able to have the 3 years of being missing out taught me a lot of lessons. Also taught me to get my life in order in a sense of where I wanted to get to and what I wanted to do when I got older.
Yep.
That's where I picked up the zoology and working at the Adelaide Zoo. And I thought the working there and working full time was a really good transition for me to go from not knowing what was expected of being an AFL player, but then also to setting yourself up for the rest of your life in the sense of a career path. And I think for me to come into Geelong Footy Club when I did was probably the perfect timing for me.
Pretty fortunate, right?
So I don't really look back on too many negatives of not being drafted and missing out on a few drafts. I think life has a way of working itself out if you do the hard work. And I eventually got into good habits and started to train really hard. And that was after I got my life in order in the sense of the work and full-time employment. So, and then also had the hindsight of understanding what the real world was. So never taking footy for granted or, disrespecting the opportunity that I had. And, I think that all played out pretty well.
Yeah. I guess like you were talking about the maturity thing, was that something that you were kind of reading into the potential feedback that you received, or were clubs, I guess, maybe being a bit more outright and saying like, hey, we just don't know if you like skill set's great, but you're not quite there. Like what was that kind of dialogue around that, or were you trying to read between the lines a little bit?
Probably reading between the lines. I think as an 18-year-old, you don't want to be reading between the lines. I mean, probably didn't have to tell that I wasn't professional. I was a little bit chubby and my running capacity probably wasn't great. So looking back, it makes a lot of sense. But at the time, you're looking at it. I was playing against guys from the Crows and the Power in the sample. I played my first game when I was 16 in the sample at the stage, and that was a pretty good achievement. When now, a lot of guys are playing really young. So the skill, like I said, it was just about getting my mindset and my attitude towards football the same as what I could deliver when it came to kicking and handballing and my the tackling and all that stuff went with it. And that's probably the difference between AFL and VFL and country footies is that being able to apply yourself and play yourself the right way and then being able to distinguish the two. I mean, that's really important. So for me, it was a really looking back, it's really easy to point out.
Yeah, okay, and I think it's really important for anyone, regardless, I guess, of what career they might be choosing to pursue, is to have that ability to be introspective and think a little bit about where you're at and where you're going and what you need to potentially do to get there. And I mean, at such a young age to be able to reflect like that and use that to kind of motivate in the end. And ultimately, it mounted in you getting drafted at the Cats, the 2005 draft. I believe it was pick 61, if I remember off the top of my head.
Yep.
When that moment finally came, I mean, did you know it was going to be the Cats? Were there a few other clubs that that you were talking to and you felt like it could be any one of these? Did it really feel random? But what was it like when the time finally came?
Well, I've already been through that 3 years in a row where people were saying they'd draft you. I mean, you hear about these stories a lot in the draft where I think we read too much into what they say. I mean, maybe as a young kid, you're looking for ways out to blame other people when you don't get picked up. So, yeah, they said they were going to draft me. They never did. I never had the conversations that I was going to be picked up from other clubs. I had conversations with Port and the Crows over all those 3 years, but never once did they ever say they were going to draft me. Yeah. I spoke to Wellesley the night before the draft. I was going into work the next day, and Wellesley just said, can you keep our conversation pretty quiet, private, but we're going to pick you up. Cameron Thurley had just left, asked for a trade to North Melbourne.
Yes.
So I think they were down of a small forward, and Wellesley spoke to me, the night before, said, please keep it quiet. The Crows did call me in the morning of the draft. I was already cleaning the draft exhibit at the time. And,
yeah.
And the Crows rang up and said, look, we'd love to draft you later in the draft. Or we're going to take you in the rookie. And then, lucky enough, I got the phone call probably halfway through the day, and Ron Watt, the development manager at the time, rang up and said, look, you're not going to have to resign and you're going to have to come across. And it was just a really nice moment to share with Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad had moved down from Darwin, sacrificed a lot. Both of them, Dad was originally from Tassie, but had been in the territory for a long time. Mum never had lived anywhere else. I don't think she visited anywhere else, to be honest. So she'd moved back to...
shift.
packed their life up, and I just wanted to go home and share the moment with them. And it was pretty special because I've always been a believer in that you don't try and do things to prove people wrong. You do things to the ones who said that you were going to do it or make it, and prove them right. So to be able to go back and just share that moment with them, also resign from a 9 to 5. I think that no one really likes a 9 to 5.
No.
So to be able to do that, and then get to Geelong, which I didn't know too much about apart from going up at senior.
Yeah, of course.
To come across here a couple of days later was always it was a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest.
Was there anything more? So that call from Wellesley and the kind of let's keep it quiet on the down low, was that sort of conversation one that you'd had before, or was there something different about that one? Did you have any more hope?
Definitely something different about that conversation, and the ways the Wellesley's approach was pretty unique and very honest. Told me where I was at. Also said, well, if you're 21, we don't want to rookie you because we're going to give you 2 years to be able to prove yourself. I don't think Bomber was too impressed that he was getting 175 centimetre chubby small forward, to be honest.
Took a little while to win him over.
It's not mine. Wellesley's approach was definitely unique and different, and I think the feel from the footy club from day one was something that I think I was just hoping that it would all work out. And the day one at the footy club was a dream come true, and something that those memories will forever be cherished.
Obviously, it was a big move, as you said, and obviously even for the family as well, who, as you said, maybe in your mum's case, potentially had never left the state at that stage. What was day one like? Obviously, they take you under the wing, and I assume you kind of get maybe paired up with, I guess other players within even that part of the field. That what does that kind of initial phase look like as you're being introduced to the team and obviously all the established faces? And
yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I mean,
there is a Gary Ablett in there at that point too.
Yeah, I think everyone has an idea or this perception that the AFL players are all living this fantasy dream world. I got moved in with James Kelly, who now is probably one of my best mates, if not my best mate. And he lived with Matty Egan and Will Slade at the time. And I remember just going, they must live in this big mansion and it'd be an amazing house. And got to this house and it was this rundown house.
The rental.
There was holes all through it. And then I went to go have a shower, and in the shower there was a massive hole out to the lounge room. And I just remember thinking, surely you can you're playing AFL footy, you can fix up your holes in your wall. And I wasn't aware that they were renovating their house to knock it down to then rebuild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was there for a week, and it was an experience. I mean, it was just an eye-opener to what the reality of an AFL footballer was. And I had to get it pretty quickly because I was 21 and I knew that. Matty Egan had been drafted a little bit later as well, so he was really instrumental early to tell me that you're going to have to quickly grab onto this opportunity, and you're going to have to learn those lessons that James Kelly and these guys got to learn over a period of time. You've got
to fast track it.
You've got 6 months to get cracking, and it always was on the back of my mind about the conversations I had with him. And but the group of guys that we were around at that time, Shannon Burns, who's still one of my closest mates, Ryan Gamble, who I got drafted with and out living with for about 4 or 5 years, are all part of that initial entry into Geelong, and then also to now being nearly 38, mates who I cherish dearly. So it has a really unique and funny way of working out, but also too the first moments of Geelong are still the same memories I hold now.
That's fantastic, and I guess as you say, there's mates that you'll always cherish, and obviously some incredible moments. So what was game one like for you when you finally got that first opportunity to don the jumper in an official formal AFL home and away match?
Yeah.
What was going through your head? And again, I guess with that, even all that context that we've just discussed, that you were having to fast track things a little bit. You didn't have the time necessarily that say a James Kelly had. That you were competing against a little bit more, I guess, in that respect. So what was that like when the moment finally arrived?
It was a unique first game, to be honest. I wasn't playing. Peter Riccardi was playing basketball with, I think, Darren Milburn, and did his calf muscle, and had to go in on the Friday afternoon and tell the coaches, which I don't think went down well with
lead balloon.
And Rico walks up to me and goes, "Mate, I think you're in, but I'm going to take half your match payments because I've just done my calf playing basketball, so you probably owe me." And I just started laughing. And Bomber's looked over to me and come and pulled me into his office and said, "Look, we've already made the call to your mum and dad. You're going to play this week." Me and Bomber had a really unique relationship. We were really close, and it was a massive help for me in my career, and development as a player, but also as a human being. And he just had unique ways of doing things. So he goes, "Yep, you're playing. I've spoken to your mum and dad. Now get out," and just shooed me away. And by that stage, you'd already told all the boys, and it was pretty cool to be able to go out there and do it. But then also to get mum and dad over really quickly from Adelaide over here, play down here at I can't even remember what it was called then.
Yeah,
a
few name changes through that period.
Yeah, it was just all that hard work, the sacrifices from mum and dad. I mean, all my family, to be honest, just all paid off. And it was just a pretty cool and unique situation. The moment that there's moments in your career that you don't forget. And you're playing your first game is one of them.
So I guess like the lead up to that first game was kind of fast tracked from the draft and the kind of accelerated path you had to go on there to even the very short turnaround between, hey, calf's gone, you're in. What was then the day itself like? I mean, that game length is the game length. Like you don't have this accelerated path into it at that particular point. Did you find yourself being able to savor the moment, or was it really head down, bum up, let's go, we've got a game to win?
Well, I've always been that type of person, to be honest, and that didn't change from my first game to my very last. Was always the same attitude, was we've got a job to do. And I think it was one of the things that helped me along my journey was, I wasn't very quick, couldn't kick very far. I struggled with my height. It's one of my attributes and one of my keys to my career was just having this knack of being able to just give everything that I got and work your ass off to do it. So for me, regardless of whether it was my first game or last game, a grand final, my attitude was always similar. Give everything you've got to this game.
Kitchen sink.
Also to your teammates. Play your heart out. Be competitive. And just try your best. And I think that didn't change, like I said, from game one to my very last game at Essendon.
Did you have a moment where, like in that first game though, where it did kind of overwhelm you? Obviously, that attitude is obviously a brilliant one to have, and I'm sure there's lots of players, and again, people in other professions as well, that would love to be able to have that laser-like focus. Was there any moment in that day where you let yourself kind of absorb the moment and what was going on around you? Or...
No.
You're incredible, mate. You're far too good at this.
There has never been a time in my career where I've, cherished a particular moment. I think there was one time in the 2007 grand final that I was able to do that, and that was after half time. And me and Moons obviously really close, and we came out after half time. We knew if we could kick the first goal, they'd be down. And I remember kicking it to Moons. He kicked the goal, and we just looked at each other and was like, "Yeah, we're going to be premiership brothers." That was the only time in my career where I can sit back to a moment where I enjoyed that 1 second. The rest of it's just a blur. I mean, in the careers, there's moments where you cherish, like when Hawkey kicked the goal. Sirens go to grand final. Yeah. Sirens when you lost a grand final for some reason stands out more than anything. But absorbing moments in a game, especially the first one, I can't say that I did.
I mean, not that I want to wade too far into the 2008 grand final, because it's not a happy moment for either of us really, and especially yourself. But you just mentioned obviously that one kind of seems to stick out a little bit more. What was it about that, I guess, that resonates with you more even today than say 2007 or 2009?
Well, I think if you look at 2008, that was our best team. I feel people will argue that we were probably I don't want to go into how many goals we were better than Hawthorn, but we were better than the whole competition that year. We lost one game. We were bloody a good team. And one day Hawthorn got us on the wrong day for us. And they were a better team on the day and beat us quite convincingly in the end. I think in that period of about 15, 20 minutes in the third. For me, it stands out because I was injured and I shouldn't have been playing. And Bomber had this knack of being able to back your teammates, so back his team in and say, if you're right to go, you're right to go. And I probably shouldn't have been playing for 3 weeks leading into that grand final, and it is a sore spot. I think about it more than actually the premierships, to be honest. But it is what it is. Maybe it's a little bit easier to let go because we had success on the other three, but that was probably one of the hardest days for me as a personal on a personal note. Reflecting on that day was pretty hard because of the injury, and then actually playing shit out. So you sit back but I think your lessons are never about losses. It's always about learning. And I think for me, that's I did the next year. I was injured again and didn't play. So it's a journey, the industry, and playing in your career. And it's just a matter about trying to do the best to learn and not make the same mistake twice.
I mean, and obviously when the opportunity arose for you in 2011, you absolutely took full advantage in that particular occasion. I guess you spoke about what you learnt from that 2008 defeat. What was it that you particularly brought with you that then, when you got that other opportunity in 2011, that you felt like really put you in good stead?
Well, I think 2007 was my second year at AFL level, so you don't really understand what goes into a premiership.
Yeah.
Also, too, you see what it had, the flow-on effect on the town itself. I mean, 44 years was a big drought.
It's huge, yeah.
You see what it did to people here, especially the older supporters who've been around, all the heartbreak of the era before us, and also to the players of that era. And I think to be able to do that as a young player probably takes away the feel of what it really means. And I think 2011, I'd been through 2008, I'd missed out 2009 through injury, I've been through my own personal dramas in 2010, so I understood what AFL actually can do to you. So 2011 was just a matter of just soaking it all in, enjoying the moment, but also to reflecting on sort of the last 3 or 4 years, which was pretty hard in a lot of ways. But just sitting back and embracing the moment, the situation that you're in, and then to beat Collingwood is bloody always a good feeling.
It's always a good feeling, right?
Absolutely.
You obviously mentioned some challenges in 2010. Now, I don't necessarily want to wade too deeply into those unless that's something you feel comfortable in doing. But that was obviously a challenging period for you. And where did that leave your headspace at that time with what had been going on and what you were facing? And obviously you've got I'd imagine the full support of the club there beside you to make sure that whatever happens, we'll look after you. You've got your back. But that's a lot going on. How did you process all of that? And even on a week to week and try to focus on the game and training and all those sorts of things, it's a lot going on.
Yeah, I'm not too sure exactly how I sort of embraced the situation in that part, but I think I had a really good support around me in a sense of from the players and my really close friends. And Neil Baum was one of my closest mates at the time. Brian Cook, Steve Hocking now, the CEO, and then also too the group around me from the football club perspective. One of the best things that I learned really quickly was my manager was talking to me about ownership, and you can make mistakes, but you've got to own it. And I think for me it was like, regardless of what the situation was or whose fault it was or whatever you want to sort of put your finger on, it was about looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, this is on you. And that was my manager's sort of advice to me at the time, Tom Petroio. And it held me in good stead because what it did was focus away of what was going externally and obviously the ramifications that was coming my way with the suspension, being spent time away from the footy club. I think for me, it was about looking at yourself in the mirror and like going, you've got yourself in this situation now, it's time to get out of it. And it's the only way to do that is to get back to remembering also too that you're privileged in playing AFL footy for a living. So don't ever think that's you're above that. Also too, to cherish that you're playing in a bloody good team and a bunch of good blokes who are all your really close mates. So you've let them down. You've also let your family down. Now, what are you going to do about it? And it's sort of, I remember from the very first day, I felt like I was being abandoned because the footy club were like, you're out for 3 months and you've got to go get a real job and you can't play till around 8. And I think we're only in January. So there was a fairly big suspension. But I sort of got it after a couple of days of feeling sorry for myself. What they're trying to do is trying to get you back to being a good person, but taking responsibility for this, and then also too putting steps in to not only improve you as a football player, but as a person. I think sometimes as in the industry we forget that. You look at some of the stuff that goes on here and in today's era, and it's always focused on about what you can do from first bounce to the last bounce, and if you can do that, then all of a sudden you're a good bloke or this and that. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of being coming out of the Geelong system is the priority of the person and investing in the human. And I've always felt like they've always had my back no matter what. And
fantastic.
That was no different that time. And like I said to you regarding the draft, I read about all the stuff that was being said about me. And that was no issue. That's part of the ramifications of what you've done.
Yeah.
But then I focused on Nigel Lappin doing running sessions with me at 6 a.m. before footy club, before the footy players, my teammates got there to training. Joel Selwood and Tommy Hawkins doing weight sessions with me at 8 o'clock at night because I couldn't do it with the other team. James Kelly going for 2-hour walks with me to help me skin folds at that time. And every single person in my life pitched in. I was doing boxing with Moons before training on other days and stuff like that. So you can either be on the negative side of things and focus on that, or you can go, look, these are the people around me. This is the support I've got. Let's get to work. And it was probably one of the most rewarding times coming out of that suspension. It was a shit situation.
You made the best of it.
But you make the most out of it. And, it really set me up for the rest of my career because I think there was some moments in that time where I really got dedicated to living the most professional life as a footballer. And I think it held me in good stead for the remainder of my, the next 6 or 7 years.
And so when you've kind of got a suspension like you had, from the sounds of it, essentially it sounds like you basically weren't allowed there from 9 to 5. Is that essentially the core of it? Yeah, and that's where you've got the the sessions with Joel or Hawk or Cal or whatever outside of those hours. That's kind of where you can kind of get in there and do what you need to do. But the core working hours, you're not allowed on site essentially. Yeah,
off limits. Yeah, off limits. And then you go to then the best thing I think the club did for me was make me go back to a real job. So I had a little place at Little River who had a conservation park out there. It was where actually Ned Kelly was filmed. I was working out there and doing some conservation stuff with the bilbies and then land management out there, and it just got me back to this is the reality. This is a reality if you stuff up again, and also too, footy is great, but it's going to finish up at some stage. So this is what everyone does every day that doesn't. It's not fortunate enough to play footy. So it was a good reminder of the real world and the realities of life without AFL.
But I guess also with that zoology work that you'd done prior, it was maybe a good way to reconnect with that side of things a little bit as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome. I was able to finish my zoologist course, which was great in that time. And then I went back to studying business and management at that time as well. So it was a good eye-opener in a lot of ways, but also too was a reminder of sort of get back to your roots. I mean, and also too, let's get your life in order. I had 3 months off of sort of being a professional athlete, and it was sort of like it was time to sort of, I guess, refocus for the rest of my career, and I think it held me in good stead.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, and again, like making the most out of what is, frankly, a shitty sort of situation, but to be able to find positives in that and better yourself in that process is obviously incredibly important. I'm thrilled that for you that was, there were lots of wins to be able to take out of it, and you got to return to the club, and obviously further success followed you at that point, which is awesome to hear. Do you have any particular favourites before we kind of pivot into the transition over to the Bombers? Do you have any particular? I mean, obviously there's a couple of flags in there which might stick out more than most. But do you have any particular fond memories from the playing days at the Cats that you really look back upon still?
I think the balance of being a really professional team, but also a team that had fun. I mean, I lived with Otto for 4 years, and that was an experience.
Heard enough over the years to get a bit of a sense for what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we got up to a lot of mischief. Let's just say Barmy was constantly on the phone. Backyard cricket games to WrestleMania, to slug guns, but that's probably another time. We had fun. We enjoyed life. I don't think many of us would be around if we were in social media world now. we enjoyed each other's company. We enjoyed a beer, but geez, we worked hard. We were competitive. There was always punch-ons at training, but it was always a common respect. And I think for me, one of the biggest things for us is being able to the glue of the legacy piece of the premierships.
Yeah.
Always bringing us back to the club, and that's probably the one thing going into this final series for this group. It's like nothing is ever given to you in this industry or in life itself. You've got to earn it. I think this group really deserves that opportunity to be able to have that legacy piece and bring them back together as a group. And I think as a player and as a really close mate of Stokesy, to have him as a premiership captain, that'd be heaven.
As a mate, nothing you'd want more for him, right?
But yeah, I think that was one of the beauties of it. We were lucky enough to have that success, but the relationships, the friendships, the bonds that you can create in that time are incredible. And like I said, to this day, I'm best mates with Otto. I'm really still close with Moons and his family. James Kelly is one of my best mates. Ryan Gamble, who I lived with for the very first couple of months when I first moved here, is still my best mate. And then the relationships you have on the other side of that, like Tom Monty, Hawkey and these types. And then Gary Ablett, we play basketball together on Tuesdays and taking up to Darwin to play footy with my local club. These things are based on playing footy together, but also to enjoying each other's company.
Yeah, and the mutual respect and all those sorts of things that come about having been a part of organisations like this and shared moments and successes like what you've had. Yeah. Is the opportunity to play as a part of the dream team another one of those moments that perhaps you look back upon?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's one of the moments I think you go back and go, shit, I'm playing with Brett Kirk, Buddy Franklin, Matty Richardson, obviously Joel Corey from a few of the boys, Corey Enright, from near Port Lincoln, Kimber, Moons, myself, and to play with Brett Kirk at the time, he was like my idol.
What was Brett Kirk?
To play with him was incredible, but the whole group, it was sort of surreal to be able to go out my third year of AFL footy and to play with the best of the best, and I felt a little bit, playing with Andrew McLeod, who grew up in Territory, was one of my idols. It was a pretty cool moment, and it's probably one of the parts of the footy where it's not about team success, but it's maybe about the individual opportunities to do something. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I roomed next door to Daniel Kerr, and he took me along to all his recovery sessions and the extra training that he did at the time, and it was only for 3 days, but opportunities of that to be able to see how other players prepare, and at the time you probably don't understand sort of the ramifications of it, but to be able to sit in the dream team against Victoria was pretty special.
Obviously you mentioned about it was such an early point in your career still. Was there a degree of, I don't know, imposter syndrome there that kind of went with the thing? Like, have I earned this? Do I belong here yet? Or did you really have that sort of feeling like that this was right for you?
There's probably a bit of both, and I think any professional athlete always says they're a bit better than they are. So you have that arrogance, you have that confidence of swagger of that. But I think there is always a humbling experience, something like that. And I think even the biggest names would probably feel that. Yeah. The humbling of walking into that hotel lobby when you're looking around, and on the top of my head, you had Brett Burton at the time. Jamie Charman was an absolute gun at Brisbane. Yep. So you're going into this room with these guys, and you're like, and for me, it was Brett Kirk. To sit there and look at him, and like, I remember the first team dinner we had, there was a spot next to him, and I just quickly ran over and I plopped myself right next to him, and to be able to just listen to him talk and talk about football and his love for it was a pretty cool experience. So yeah, it was a moment in time where I wish I could go back and enjoy it a little bit more, but it was a pretty cool cool experience.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we don't really see opportunity. I mean, ignoring the COVID circumstances over the last few years and kind of what that's also limited, but we're not really seeing moments like these as often anymore. And so I imagine, I mean, who knows where things like that match or any of the old, state v state sort of matches ever, whether they do or don't come back, but they're few and far between. I guess it must be something, you still get to look back upon really fondly, because who knows when this will come back.
Yeah, exactly right.
So as I mentioned before, there's the Essendon component as well, and obviously you were a part of the club at what was a challenging time, if I I delicately dance around some of that. What was it like for you joining the club at that period with all that was kind of going on around you?
It was an interesting time. I obviously finished up at Geelong. I spoke to a few clubs about playing on, but I just didn't feel right. And the way that it finished with Kel and Stevie, I just thought it was a perfect way to say goodbye to footy, the AFL industry. So I'd started my work at the AFL house. I think it was about February, I've enjoyed a good 5 months of no footy. I got
enjoying the lifestyle.
Quite comfortable having muffins in my coffee in the morning. And all of a sudden on the board, on the TV was Bombers suspension. And I was in the house at the AFL and word got around that they were going to allow them to draft players or take blokes who've just finished up. And one of the blokes joked around that I worked with just said, you're going to be one of the phone calls. And I was like, nah, there's no chance in hell. And then the manager started blowing up my phone and Adrian Adoro and said, we want you and Kel. And Kel worked upstairs. So I ran up to Kel's office or his desk and was like, mate, did you get the phone call? He's like, yeah. I said, like, shit. Kel's quite skinny. I'm quite naturally big. So it's like, oh shit,
we got a bit of work to do.
I've got a bit of work to do. And he just said, let's just hear him out. So we heard him out. And Woosha was unbelievable. Woosha was like, mate, we don't want you to come here to dominate or get a kick. What we need is we've got 12 months with our senior players. We need you and Kel to be able to come in and help develop those younger kids and be able to be a sounding board off those guys.
Yeah.
So when the players come back, they haven't missed out on 12 months on development. And the club was in a shambles at the time, and Dodoro and Woosha were incredible. Come in, enjoy your footy, have fun. No pressure. And it was a really fun year. I loved it. And my start of it was incredible. I started off on fire and it's like, maybe I can go around again. This is easy.
I think I recall a few games where you're lighting it up early on. You're like, it's to beat. And
then all of a sudden, the no pre-season, no leg weights kicked in and my body just slowly packed up. And I remember it was about 4 games ago, and Woosh said, I'll get you to 200 even if you can't walk. But once you've got your 200, you need to finish up and let the younger players. And I'm like, yeah, no worries. And the freedom to be able to go out there for my last 2 games, I think I had 30 in both my last 2 games, but I didn't chase it, man. I reckon my pressure actually would have been pretty low.
One-way game that day.
Yeah, both those 2 games was a way to be able to just go, yeah, this is me, and I'm absolutely spent, and I'm completed the journey, and now it's time to hang them up. But I loved it. It was really enjoyable. It was great to be able to spend it with Kel. Also great to be able to play with people like Ryan Crowley and Nathan Graham and Joffa Simkin, who I knew all those boys beforehand. So, and to meet people like Joe Danaher and Zachy Merritt, and Dusty Parish, who just got drafted, it was a really unique situation. Never happened again to be able to go in and say, look, we don't really care too much about your output, but what we want to do is you to be able to spend some time with our junior players and our players who are here and help them with that transition of what's going on. And I didn't realise how big Essendon was until that happened.
Until you're actually there. And
then you're there, and all of a sudden you've got people coming left, right, and centre. But yeah, it was a fun experience, and I look back with really fond memories of Essendon Football Club and what they were able to help me get to 200, but also too what we were able to give back and try and play our part in what was a really horrible situation for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do a bit to help, and I'm sure they're incredibly thankful for that. And obviously, they gave you a little bit back, and helped you get to 200, which is obviously an amazing milestone. And I assume another one of those things that you look back upon really, really fondly as well.
Absolutely, I actually really enjoyed my time there, like I said, and to go play 200 and then just to walk off and say, yeah, I'm done. Like this, that was an emotionally draining day. To be able to say, yeah, I'm done again. Not everyone gets a nice retirement, but I've got 2 nice retirements, or one nice sacking and one nice retirement.
I guess the fact that you're looking at him still as being a nice sacking is a great way to look at it.
It's good to be, yeah, exactly.
It's the most delicate, respectful firing that I've ever had, yeah.
Exactly.
But obviously in that post-AFL life that you're now living. You've worked as an Indigenous engagement and programs manager for the AFL. There's people and engagement manager for the Geelong Footy Club. You've worked several different roles and continuing to do so today. What does it all look like? What has it been like outside of obviously the initial interruption there to go and join the Bombers out of nowhere? How are you enjoying that life these days? Every now and then we hear you on the podcast with Lingy or whatever.
I really enjoyed my time going back to the footy club. I love my time at the AFL learning. I think they really helped me understand that the game's a lot bigger than what you actually think it is. And as a player, you always think that should be always about you and the product that you put out there. But I think going to the AFL, you see a different side of that. And also, too, you can't be a player that always throws stones, but then don't want to go and help and create solutions for the issues that were there. So for me, it was really satisfying to go back and learn that kind of stuff, and then go to a clubland and then look at the amount of work that goes into the product. Was another side of it that you don't really
the behind the scenes
as a player. There's some people at the footy club who I've known for a long, long time, and you don't see the amount of work that goes into one appearance or one school visit or getting some sponsors in, and then all of a sudden you're seeing it and you go, this makes sense. And you wish you kind of had that vision when you're playing, because then maybe you'd be a bit more respectful to a lot of the people around you, or the cheer squad or the supporters that you see down the road. It starts to click and you go, holy moly, like it's
that holistic thing.
Yeah, and it's a pretty surreal feeling once you go through it. You start to realise the game is pretty big, but it's only as big as what people around it make it. And I think I've been really fortunate to be always been respectful kind of a person, but to be able to sit back and now go, holy, this is a little bit bigger than the 2 hours that you see on the footy field, but also too just bigger than a footy club. It's about changing, being able to play your part in such a big organisation, but also to bigger picture of life. It's a pretty humbling experience to understand that.
Do you think, and obviously this is purely your own experience here alone, you obviously talking about it was very much that all-in, chips-in sort of approach to the way you that you trained, the way you played, like that. It was that laser-like focus that we discussed before. Do you think that in part because of that is maybe why you didn't necessarily at the time have that broader perspective of what was kind of going on around you, or do you think that's maybe still somewhat reflective of the typical AFL player experience, because you've got your week-to-week kind of, for want of a better word, grind, from recovery to training to this to game day, that regardless of that approach that you bring to the game, it's still something that maybe a degree of perspective that is lost?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think there's a bit of your focus is always about the game or upcoming game or training session or the next day. I definitely think there's a lot that lays with that, but I also think there's a part of being an AFL player that you have an arrogance, and I don't think it's a bad arrogance. It's a healthy arrogance of the reason why you're where you are and playing AFL footy. And I think you're so locked into playing, but also you're so locked into we are the game.
Yep.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's the reason why a lot of players are as good as they are. It's because they have this confidence in their ability, but also the arrogance that go with that. And I don't think all arrogance is bad. So I think there's parts of it where you're focused on the day-to-day life and getting yourself up and games and that turnover. And also too, a lot of players are very shy. They don't like the limelight. I never wanted to take a photo because I didn't think I was anything special. So I was like, why would I want to do that when I don't even feel like I'm deserving of that?
Yeah.
But then when you finish and you see that bigger picture, it does make sense. But at the time, you're never going to be able to tell a player while they're in the moment, mate, just cherish it, understand
it's hard
it a little bit, because they won't listen. They never would. And once they finish it, they finish for 5 or 6 years and they go, oh, shit, yeah, what you're saying is true. And we all have to go through it. So it's the beauty journey of life.
Yeah, and I imagine even if you do listen, it's hard to really get your head around and digest it at the time as well.
Yeah, you're hearing without listening.
You don't have the context.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really important part of the whole thing. So as we start to wind things down, we'll cast an eye to what's going on with the Cats right now, your beloved Cats. As we record this, we're enjoying a week off. Well, game day week off, I should say. I hear that Friday is going to be a fairly full-on day for the boys from all reports. But how are you feeling about how things are shaping up? Obviously, we spoke before about how much you'd love to see Joel lift that cup as a premiership captain, and obviously some of the other boys as well. But what are you thinking? How are things shaping up? We've locked in the prelim, the home prelim, or as much as it can be a home prelim for us.
I don't know how to go for the rest of this final series. I mean, the game on the weekend, the amount of mini heart attacks I had.
Yeah.
I was more nervous watching that game than I had been ever playing. I'm quite confident. I mean, I love the approach of Scotty coming out and backing Gary Rowan early in the week and having his support and having his back, and then obviously to see him perform the way that he did was incredible. I think, and that's what's been missing. I think with this group is that the support mechanism around that, but also to players like Gary Rowan who are sort of role players in a way, stepping up, and the burden doesn't always have to fall on Danger or Hawkey or Stokesy to be able to perform at their highest to be able for us to get a win. We got across the line. I think Collingwood probably let that one slip, but in saying that, finals are just a win or loss, and it's no matter how you win it. But I also really firmly believe finals are based on moments, and at the crucial moments during the game, when it mattered the most in the last 2 minutes, we came up big. Cam Guthrie's efforts, Mitch Duncan's efforts,
Jeremy Cameron on the flank there, and
the
hard running from Gary Rowan and Max Holmes to get into the right position, all those sorts of things.
All that play a part. So I'm pretty confident in what we're about to hopefully the journey that we're about to go on for the next couple of weeks. But I just hope that these guys can understand the part of the legacy that I spoke about before that you can leave behind as a group. If not anything for anyone else, but for themselves. And to see Cam Guthrie, Mike Blitzer, to see Tommy Atkins, who missed out on a couple of drafts now, be a really integral part of our football club. Tom Stewart to get a draft. There's so many stories across the board that you just love for him to be able to, Hawkey to be able to be satisfying that him and Stokesy, this is their group, to have their own, Dangerfield, it would be really nice. Even Scotty, Scotty's burden of this whole, he was given a flag in 2011. I'll tell you what, it wouldn't have been hard. I mean, it wouldn't have been easy to coach that 2011. So we were full of egos.
And so you're a brand new face walking into that.
And walking into that would have been a nightmare for him to try coach us. So, be able to have his moment in the sun, because even though he's been an incredible coach in the home and away series for a long, long time, the most successful coach in the history of footy in footy
of the game, yeah.
There's always this narrative that is run that he's lets them down in the finals, and to be able to have his little moment, I think. And then also too, you got James Kelly and Shannon Burns coming back to the club, Matty Egan coming back to the club. We got Griggy, who's the development coach there. All these stories, Eddie Betts coming back and helping out Tyson Stengle,
which is a huge story. Yeah,
there's stories littered around. Every club's got them, but I'm selfish. I'm biased.
No, we want to see the Cats.
We want to see the Cats win again. I mean, it's been too long. It's been 11 years.
That's far too long after everything that we got to enjoy through your playing days, if nothing else.
Exactly.
Now you bring a perspective to this that most other people that will come on this show will never have. Who's the greatest Cat of all time in your eyes? Is it someone you played with? Is it someone you've been able to have?
I'm biased. I mean, I would say there's three, and I'd hate to sort of differ them. I'd say Matty.
I won't ask you to pick one. Then that's fine.
No, Matty Scarlett, Joel Selwood, and Gary Ablett Jr. I think we'll never see whatever Gary Ablett was able to achieve when he was getting tagged every week. I think those three stand. Well, I personally think Joel as an overall Cats is the greatest, and then I think Scarlo and Gaz sit right underneath him. I wasn't around with Buddha Hocking, definitely wasn't around with Polly Farmer, so I can't really speak for that. But yeah, in my era and what I've been able to see, I definitely think Joel, with the influence, the greatest you take in all aspects of it, playing,
absolutely,
what he's done for the club, what he's done for the playing group, what he's done for keeping this culture together. I think he goes down as our greatest. And then Scarlo and Gaza are just a step below them.
Half one below. That's fair.
I'd never say that's Scarlo's face, but that's where I think. And then I think underneath that you can put about 20 blokes on there.
Just throw a blanket over him at that point.
So, Corey Henry, how do you leave him off the list? That's one of the greatest guys of all time in the club. So that'd be my three, and Joel would probably, and actually Hawkeye would be right there,
Right up there too.
underneath that. So, yeah, Joel would be mine.
I won't put any more pressure on you because otherwise we'll find ourselves listing about 22 different blokes in a sec that all perfectly well justify a spot there as well. So, but I would agree, and I think the fan base is starting to realise it themselves, specifically about Joel. Like, yes, he's been a brilliant player. I think as he's now getting towards the end and we're seeing this new crop start to come through, and they're taking a lot of that responsibility off him when it comes to the on-field stuff. I think people are starting to realise just how important that. I mean, I think we always knew. But I think there's a greater level of appreciation of that leadership that he's bringing now as this next generation starts to take over. That really, he's a huge part of why they are the way they are now.
And I think he was a big reason why we were at the start. I mean, he was a 17-year-old kid that came in and has held that ever since then, and has done an incredible job and always maintained who he was. And never once did he ever get ahead of himself, treat anyone any differently. Always had the utmost respect for the players, their partners, their mum and dads. I cannot speak highly enough of the man, and that's why I think if you spoke any player that played with him, all they want to see him is for him to get the opportunity to be a premiership captain, and that would be a fitting way for him. Not retiring him, but it'd be a good way to finish off his career.
Yeah, right near the end for sure. Whether this ends up being the end or not, right near the end would be a perfect way to kind of cap things off, as you say. We did just touch on, obviously, he's leading that next generation through. Is there someone that you look at the club now, that next generation player that like maybe you've just got a closer eye on, you take a bit of a fancy to the way they're going about it, and you think like you're going to be something?
Well, I've always appreciated Tommy Atkins. I love him as a bloke. I love his family. They're very respectful, very really humbling group of humbling family. Love the way he approaches footy. I love the way he approaches everyday life. Love he's a bit of a hippie. And I think he's getting his dues. He's bloody turned himself from a very, very much a role player to a guy who's in big moments in our club that
flips the game on its head.
In that fourth quarter against Collingwood, stepped up with the best of them, and he's gone from a role player to an absolute superstar in our team, and is actually paving the way at the moment ahead of Joel and Paddy Dangerfield and these type of players. So
he's benching those blokes at the moment.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think he's our next guys coming through, and I think we've got a lot of them coming through at the moment. But I think sometimes we focus on the younger players a little bit more, and we forget about the middle tier players, Cam Guthrie, Mark Blizzards and these guys. But Tommy Hackins, I must admit, him and Bradley Close are the two guys I love watching and enjoy the journey they're on. They
are good fun to watch. I'd agree with you there. So as we start to wind things up, what's next for you? Where do you see things going from here?
I'm just enjoying life. I've got two young boys. They're 5 and 3. I've got a couple of businesses that I run from Geelong to Melbourne. I enjoy life without footy. I enjoy not the hustle and bustle of it. I enjoy being able to watch as a fan and as a supporter. And I love being able to go back and love the club as it is. And for me, it's about embracing and enjoying life with my boys at the moment. So, sitting there and watching them grow, whether they want to play footy, whether they don't. It's just cool to be able to be present and be around at this time of their life, to be honest. So footy is not that important to me anymore. I'm glad that I had the career that I had, also too the life experience away from footy when it comes to working. But I'm quite happy without the hustle and bustle of the AFL industry and being able to be a part of it from a media perspective with some of the stuff that I do at the age. And that's about it. And just enjoying it from afar. I'm a pretty bad supporter. I was throwing a few things around the lounge room on Friday, on Saturday afternoon. And hopefully we can go one better than we did a couple of years ago, and these guys get the reward they deserve.
Yeah, I was saying on the show over the course of the last few weeks, very unfortunate to have not been able to get to a game all this year with my kids being the age they are, my wife kind of working some stuff on the weekend. But I managed to get to the Cats Pies game in the weekend. And it is those moments I wasn't throwing things around. I didn't have anything to throw, which was probably a good thing. But the moments that come with that, like, I don't know, end up just in a hug with some random bloke next to me after the game when that siren went. Like, they're all those moments that we all love about it. And I'm sure, despite being on kind of the other side, maybe watching on the TV these days, they're the moments you still savour, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, I guess, the host of this show, thank you so much for coming aboard. But as a fan for so many years, thank you so much for what you've contributed to the club. Congratulations on all you've achieved. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch you on the field doing what you do, to chat to you today. I'm just so thankful for everything that you've contributed to the Cats. So thanks so much, Stokesy.
No, thanks very much, and like always, go Cats.
And Cats fans, those watching and listening now, please make sure to subscribe to the Hoop Show on YouTube if you haven't already. The Behind the Play podcast feed, subscribe to that one as well. And until next week, remain Geelong strong. Thank you again, Stokesy. We'll see you later. Go Cats.